it is a field, it is a job which gives me a lot of satisfaction, because the production of a movie is like a heavy toil sometimes. But when you sit at a computer or at a piece of paper, and no decision and no decision costs you anything, you can put everything in there, and your imagination knows no boundaries. This is a very pleasant phase of movie making. When it comes to dialogues, I'm trying to steal things from buses, from public transport, from streets. I like to listen to people, go somewhere with somebody random, and listen to them, overhear some discussions. If you go like several kilometers outside of big cities, people speak in a beautiful poetic way, and it's enough sometimes to take notes. But quite often, I try to do as much from myself. I have to add as much from myself. Writing a script is a very strange process, because you're sitting alone and you're talking to yourself. From the outside, it looks horrible. But when you come up with several protagonists and several locations, you can watch that film in your head, and you can look it from different angles, and come up with different places and new protagonists. So it's a very intimate process in your brain. When it comes to what you mentioned in the beginning, that there's a point which draws the attention of a viewer, I believe that when it comes to the construction and of the story arc, I think we're able to forgive a lot as the viewers. You have to get somebody interested as soon as possible. We had a number of problems with editing and with script writing with this beginning, which was even longer. And I think it's very, I would say, like a ordinary drama, and a bit of, even boring at times. But I think I thought that we can bear with the 10 minutes of a movie without making a decision about it. I decided, if starting very with a bank, that would be a very big promise to the viewers, because the viewers would expect more and more tension. And I thought that telling this story about like normal life, I think the first 10 minutes is very good. And I'm really glad that you couldn't draw your eyes from the screen. So my intention in the script and later in the editing was that the further you went into the movie, the more would be a space, the more would be the space for interpretation. I don't know if I managed to pull it through, but I like this saying that half of the film is on the screen and half of the film in the head of the viewer, and I wanted to have more and more about the viewer than, or that the person would get more and more information that would allow them to build a story in their heads. And I don't know if I succeeded to do that, but hopefully yes. I'm all green then. Another very interesting trick was for you to present the protagonists without judging them, without moralizing. So you leave us a free path to our own interpretation. How did you get this idea from, to lead that movie in this way? Okay, let me start from the mud, because this mud is a detail, but I think movies are made up of details, and it appeared somewhere on the way. I was traveling around Poland in my car to get the inspiration. I was watching a lot of materials on the internet, And at some point, I stumbled upon a discussion of a father and son who was already grown, who said he doesn't want to have kids in the village because they would play in the mud, and said, okay, I played in the mud, you play in the mud. What's wrong with the mud? And suddenly in my head, this mud became a certain important element. I never thought about it before, but then I mean, there's a lot of a hard surface put on in the villages to avoid the mud. And Jerzy Kapuściński told me about the film The Flames from 1970s, and the poster presents a boot in the mud, and then I thought that this mud would be very important. We were shooting in March this year, and that was the last moment for the mud. And the weather in Warmia was crazy. We had winter in the morning, autumn in the midday, and summer in the evening. And about this, not judging the protagonists, when we're creating a script in which there is a one good man, usually they're the protagonist, and he has all the antagonists. It's a bit like a cartoon. In life, it is so that there are no bad people, but everybody cares about himself and his relatives, his close ones. In a conflict with others quite often, and because we think that somebody is bad for us, is because he's good for himself. So I really wanted every of those people to have some sort of a rationale. Both the policeman and the clergyman could have been the bad person, the antagonist, but they do have their own point of view and their own rationale. Maybe that's about it. One short question, because I wanted to come back to this first scene, this accent in the movie. So this throwing this manure at the front and at the gate of a member of parliament, I think you achieved a lot thanks to that. We felt the village. When my son was, I have this recollection. When my son was small, when he was little, we had an aunt who lived in the country, and this young gentleman, we took him with the husband to the village, and my husband took him by the hand and said, "Smell it." He was standing over a pool of manure and said, "Smell it." So Michał was smelling it. Of course, he didn't like this, and my husband said, "This is the smell of manure. Smell it." And when I was watching this film, this manure that was of course I didn't feel I couldn't smell this manure, but I had this recollection of the smell, and it entered the movie, and I smelled I had this feeling of the village. So great. Before you answer that question, maybe I will add a few words. Of course, this is also related to all the answers. I would give you a more put more of a framework to our discussion. I used to be a DOP at beginners films, and there were plenty of script writers there. There were quite often the script writers, because it's easier to make a debut for a script writer than for a director to look for a script. But of course, this is related to a certain danger that there's no element of control. I can divide it into two types of approach to a movie. We have a scriptwriter / director who keeps desperately, who holds desperately to what he wrote. So it's difficult to divorce himself from their own text. So when I made a movie with Natalie Portman, after the movie, I congratulated her and I said, "Listen, regardless of what the movie was like, it was not like an ingenious movie, but I think you're a great material for a director, because you're able to get distance from your script. So you've understood that you can do things differently, and you can do it better. I wanted to ask you how this tension between your writing and directing looks like. It's very important for many young directors. It has something. There is this relation with fear that if you have lower budgets, that you mentioned that if you have lower budgets, there's less fear. If I understand well what you have in mind, is that your attachment to something I wrote, so that it has to be the same on the screen. Yeah, this might be a problem. I think that I managed to overcome this slightly. It took me a few years of work. It is a big mistake to hold on desperately to your original ideas. And I'm sort of, my assumption is that there are plenty of people working on this film to make it as good as possible, but let's say the director should be most focused on this goal. I cannot here now say to everybody, I wrote here that the car was to be like this, and we don't have this car, so on the set we have only this day. The actors have we only have that day with the actors. The weather is going away, and we had to make the base scene out of what we've managed to shoot. I have quite a flexible approach to text. Simultaneously, we were improving the script, so going to those real farms. Changed this text a bit. We made a cement because I could see things with our own eyes. It is very important what you've mentioned. So it's good to let go of this desperate hold on your original ideas. I wanted to ask you if the film has the distributor, and what are the plans for distribution? Will it be available in the cinemas? I hope it will. The producer is talking about that right now. Right now, so far we have only been to Gdynia with that movie, and it will be important for us. The international premiere would be important for us, and the international distribution too. And I hope it will be in the cinemas, but I have no concrete information about that. We hope that it will be a question of several months. Concerning the actors, how did you get the actors? Because for me, these are actors which are not very well known, and the main role of the Martyniuk, Paczesny was playing him. It's fantastic. That like a true flesh and blood role. All other roles. How did you select those actors? Because you're a young person. You I suppose you don't know them personally. These are people who work in theaters, I suppose. How did you do the casting? Well, I think that Poland has a lot of fantastic undiscovered actors, and it's good to dig and to go around the Polish theaters and follow different people. I'm not a fan I'm not a fan of this stardom principle that somebody plays one role and then they go to play 20 other roles. As a viewer, I don't want to be too smart as a director, but as a viewer, I prefer to see new actors. However, but I'm trying to just to know actors. I like going around theaters, and when I was meeting with one of the mentors, like tutors of one of my short forms, when I got a question in the script, who will play I said, we have to do a casting. He said, no, come on, if you want to be the director, you should know actors. Don't give me a final name, but give me a reference, so that you should be able to give me 3 types of actors that work contemporarily that could play that. And I wasn't able to answer that question to him at that time, and it it hurt my ambition a bit. So my casting was different from a standard one. That together with Agnieszka Skalska, who was the head of production, we took an old Canon and we were going around different towns and cities in Poland. And because we were going around the different theaters, of course we made castings in the city where these actors were. So because we were going to them, we would get people who would not come to Warsaw because it's too far away, or they don't have time, or they had bad experience with castings. So quite often you have the whole day, it's like the whole day you just enter, you say your name and you leave, that's it. And we were more intimate with our castings and in places like they knew, so like theaters where they worked, and that gave also a possibility, they were longer a bit and they felt better as humans. So I think it's a good method of altogether. Thank you, I understand. And how did you get the funds for this movie? I think this is interesting for young people because you're a young man. Your name is probably not well known. How did you get the funds? Can you tell the people what was your path? Well, here it will be this relation to this systemic thing. We'll rate the system. I was working with this Munch studio, which has several advantages in the system that they have. 80% of the budget probably comes from the Polish Filmmakers Association and Polish Film Institute. Additionally, it's co-financed by the Warmia and Mazury Film Fund, to which we applied with a ready script, with certain acting proposals, and also with certain ideas for locations, because we had a number of ideas where all this could take place. But Warmia worked well at several levels there. So this is, this Munch studio has different modes, and it was not the feature movie mode, which is that they take a project as their own and apply for the money. This is the 60-minute program. It's a competition formula, which I find great for a beginner, because when I took part in a panel in Gdynia, we had a discussion how to make the system work, and when I was talking about myself, I think that the system is not that bad. I privately had problem with myself going to the producer. We do not have too many producers in Poland. Is a huge risk, because if I go with a project to a producer, and if I don't do well, and the producer will remember me forever, and I was really afraid of that. So I preferred not to go, and said I had a work in progress for many years because I felt safer with that. But Munch Studio is making a competition. We have maybe several or 100 people taking part in the competition, and about 20 go to the second stage, and there's a deadline for applications. And the fact that you have a date by which you have to finish this project and submit your work is psychologically very important. Because if I was thinking about going with this idea to the producer who just makes movies all the time, I would be preparing this movie until today. I would be always unhappy, and because there was a deadline, you either try or not. So I applied what I had. I went to an interview and said what I don't like about what I submitted, and there was a lot of understanding. I encountered a lot of understanding. So I think this formula of competition is pretty comfortable psychologically from initially, and I think that a deadline is a very useful thing. However problematic, what can be a problematic is to, the fact that you have a deadline, you either makes you do something or not. With my psychological construction, I would be rewriting the script until this very day if I were to thinking about going to see a producer who works on a film market. So what do you want to change in the system? What do you think should be better? What irritated you in the way when it comes to my production process, I can't say a bad word about it, because of course you can always debate about how much money would be better for a movie, but we had so much creative freedom. I think that if the producers were open enough, I don't know if I would ever have a more friendly conditions to film in filmmaking. I think that the idea for such a casting with some producers would not work, because somebody might think that it's better to have an actor who's famous and to carry the movie. I also don't have a lot of experience, which is also very important. Quite recently, I could more be a participant of Film Spring Open rather than sit here and lecture you. So I don't think I have a lot of wise things to tell you about what you can change in the system. Okay, let me collect my thoughts before I carry on. What about the shooting days? Did you have enough time? We had 17 shooting days, 16 plus one extra, like for extra shots. It's not much. But we agreed to something, so everybody knew the game we were playing, so it was clear that we would not have 3 additional days. From this point of view, also the method of production, the documentalist camera and very long shots. This time also impacts the time impacts the time of production, because we didn't do 1 or 2 scenes, we did 4 scenes a day. We also were very focused on catching almost documentally the scenes, like with a calf. This calf it got born while we were filming, and we decided to make a scene with it. So despite the fact that we were really short on time, we were also able to somehow play it around. When it comes to time and money, I think the most important thing is that a lot of people who were working on this, they just wanted this movie to be made. Even people who were making small things, the owners of locations, the extras, so many people who joined us and saw that we are quite a positive group of people. The crew here was not were not people who came here just to do the job and count the shooting days. It was a group of people who wanted to have an adventure together, and also actors had this approach, and I think that was the difference. It was very family-like. We got together. It was like a family reunion. We knew that we don't have money, but at least let's have some fun and enjoy the time together. Maybe that also influenced the result. I'm also interested in one more thing. Coming back to the movie, it's a lot of emotion in this movie. It's very saturated with emotions, in my opinion. How did you manage to get this tension? Because this tension rises all the time. We feel nervous. We always anticipate that something will happen. So we're participating in this movie all the time. That's a question that I struggle to answer. We're all emotional animals, I believe. And I worked a lot with the actors. We both wanted to be as close as humans as possible, but it's not an engineering approach. I can't tell you exactly which methods I used. it was very intuitive. Well, with me, the process of filmmaking is very intuitive, and maybe afterwards I can come up with some sort of explanation which is satisfactory as an answer. But I think there's a lot of intuitive decisions, and we really wanted to make it as honest as possible. I personally didn't expect that we will be in Gdynia's main competition, that so many people will be talking about this. So I privately had this comfort that we're not afraid to take risks. Nobody had any expectation that we will be invited to film Spring Open. We just wanted to make a movie of our dreams and to do everything that we want to do, at least within the frames or within our financial and temporal means. And you were successful. But now maybe a more of a stupid question, but I'm really perplexed by two scenes. There's one with breaking of the window, and the second one also the window is broken. A boy comes up, takes a piece of glass and looks at the glass. We have reflections. It's a very poetic element. Who came up with that? The scriptwriter. Was it written in a script, or was it spontaneous, just like this calf? No. The calf was spontaneous. We took the opportunity. There was a certain motive with calves, maybe not the way it worked, but the glass was in the script. But now that you're asking, I thought that it will be, when it comes to this being bound to the text, I was sure when we were approaching this that this is something that will be deleted, that this is something that will be, it's too contrived, it's too artificial, and I wanted to be too vertical in my description of the world, but nobody seemed to be bothered by it during the editing, so it stayed. It's a scene where I want everybody to interpret it in their own way. Did you inspired by somebody or some movies with the scene? Talking concretely about that scene. Well, concretely, I wouldn't be able to tell, but I'm ready mentally and emotionally to find an example. I found one. Idziak. Like in the double life of Veronique. Yeah, the Kieślowski cinema. Yeah, this is how I feel. Yes, Sławomir called me, and when Sławomir called me and he asked if I can come, I said I can't say no because I was always the fan of your movies. But because no, that is true. Yeah. I have a question. If that was 16 days, was it in some sort of blocks, or 16 in a row? Because the main actor, which theaters did it come from? I knew only Agnieszka, but only for a short time. And I felt this multidimensionality, that even this politician, I felt that it is in some. We saw that he's very stereotypical politician, and then there was some discussion with him, and we felt that we have a different perspective, and his different perspective was shown, that he's not like a purely bad person, but he's more aware, or maybe in the context of our times, there was always something with many dimensions that we don't know from the beginning about this argument. It works well in the context of storytelling, that we get new information, which sometimes explain the tension that you get there. To answer your second question, the management of information you get to the viewer. The boredom is the biggest sin. It has to be interesting in the telling. And that's the main goal. And the perspective of the politician, this is what I try to answer to you, that there are no flat bad guys, that we should give somebody else a chance to describe this world with their own eyes. I think that the perspective is a very film-like tool, cinematic tool. The cinema gives us an opportunity to look at the world with somebody else's eyes. This is the most important thing. And I'm really happy that you notice it and that you appreciate this, that these people have their own truth. And of course, there are bad people in the world, but I deeply believe that most of them are only care about their own business, because everybody wants to good for themselves and for the closest people. And it's not just, of course, there are exceptions about which we know. If we talk about the number of shooting days, this is also regulated by provisions of law. So we had small breaks, 2 or 3, 4 days. Our headquarters was in Olsztyn. Me with the DOP and head of production, Agnieszka Winka, who was the set designer and the costume designer and the set design, were a bit earlier. So I was there for 6 weeks long, because we were shooting around Olsztyn. So in every direction we could, but it was, I would say, we made a ring 20 kilometers around Olsztyn. That's where we were shooting. And during the 3 days, we also made some rehearsals, some documentations, location rehearsals. So quite a lot of work. So if you have a set and you have 30 people coming to the set, it's better to be prepared. Of course, you have to be prepared and open to the situation that everything can change. But a lot of time went to us getting ready. So, for example, we didn't manage to get the whole script in such a way, but I think we managed to get 60%, 30% in Canon, in locations, in costumes, with iPhone, so that, I mean, you take actors to locations, and when they can have some jackets that they will have finally in the shot, that gives a lot. So we did things like that, and I recommend that to you. That's great, because you're ready on the set, both you and the set designer. We didn't edit during the shooting, but yeah, that was our intention, but that was not possible for financial and technological reasons. This basic assumption was that this movie is much more edited than it was supposed to be, but it's good. But then we judged whether something works or not. The 90% of the scenes were made in one shot, and then when we decided that's not enough, we would take an extra shot. Well, chronologically, no, that would be a dream. I know, but the scene with the politician was made on the first day, and it's at the end of the film. So the lack of chronology in the shooting, I think that it's the chronology is a privilege of higher budgets. This is the element I forgot about. We had to adapt to what we had. So work on locations and availability of actors. The actors were from theaters, so their schedules were very tight, the majority of them. Yeah, in terms of calendar, yeah, there was a lot of strategic decisions. I knew Artur Paczesny because I've been for many times in Apollo Theater, but I knew his plays, but I knew that there's a guy as an actor, and I had a chance to see him in a corridor, and I knew how he was talking and moving. So I know Agnieszka also from this theatrical world because she's from Strzemka-Dymirski. So this is from the times of Wałbrzych. Monika Kwiatkowska. We met her because she went to our casting in Białystok. And she came, she made 2 scenes, and I knew already that we want her. A lot of actors are from Olsztyn, where we were shooting, not because it was more convenient, but because we made a lot of castings there, and they were like top notch when it comes to, like, perfect when it comes to our protagonists. The first idea was, of course, these are creations, of course, but I really wanted for them to give as much as possible as human beings, so that there will be less of a contriving of characters, but giving more of your own problems, fears into the characters, so that they are more flesh and blood, just like we. So they would be just like we are, to avoid constructing characters that are better than normal people. We wanted them to give them as many of their own weaknesses as possible. Do you have any questions? I have 2 questions. Will relate to what you already said. You mentioned at least twice that on the set there were people who really cared for this movie to be made, and I wanted to ask you, how do you do it? How do you make people want to enter a project and make it as good as possible? And my second question, I wanted to move back to your inspirations, because there was a very concrete scene. Did not find it. I might be wrong, but could you please correct me? That people who make movies watch a lot of movies, and I believe there's a huge list of your inspirations, what you really love in the cinema, and directors that for some time in some way became your point of departure. Yes, so first about the people, maybe. It's not something very innovative, because David Fincher says that the directors who start are advised to surround themselves with people who are more experienced, because it's safer. However, these people who are more experienced will tell you how you should make your movie. But it's worth to start with people who are also beginning, or they didn't do a much more than you. So it's not a situation that you had only lecturers around you. I think that this is important. And if somebody in the beginning of their way is enthusiastic, you are enthusiastic when you begin. Of course, I mean, I hope that people I used to work with felt that they're co-authors of the movie, because they gave a lot into the movies, but I didn't know if it was thanks to our relation or not. But I felt that they do have space. There were a lot of proposals from them, and I was positively surprised by them quite often. That there were no situation that you had to, I don't know, encourage somebody a lot, or force, maybe, or convince is a better word. Everybody wanted for this to work. I remember that at some point this set designer showed me there's a window I could break. I said, wow, I wouldn't even dare to even offer to propose that. We had like extra things offered by our people, which I was afraid to think. Talking about engaged people, for our actors, it was all quite often these were like first ideas with first meetings with movies, and they came there just for fun and just to enjoy themselves. But of course, it's worth to watch a lot of movies, and I really love cinema. I don't know if I have any direct inspirations right now. Of course, I think you can find them. The authors that I like, I don't know, Asghar Farhadi from Iran, or Said Rustai and who's his younger colleague, who's moving around a similar world. And these are like social, psychological topics which they describe or they storytell with a lot of tension from the very outset. And apart from all the controversies around Farhadi, I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, the way of storytelling from another controversial city. I know, for example, Sokurov in Nalchik made a film school which who we had Kira Kowalenka who did Unclenching the Fist, and these are people who are younger than me, who made beautiful movies which are very close to humans, and they have the understanding like old time directors. There's plenty of very beautiful movies, and it's worth to watch them. Unfortunately, they are not always in streaming services, but you can find them. We didn't talk yet. What was your direct inspiration for this movie? Well, this topic of a village, I didn't hear that. What was your point of departure to move that in that direction, and to talk about it, and to talk about such the first inspiration is so obvious that I don't know if I should talk about it. If you follow things politically, you might know who was the first inspiration. This agricultural movement. This putting manure at the doorstep of politicians was not my original idea. It happened in Poland already, but it was one YouTube movie which was watched by 50,000 people. So things happen like that. That this was the starting point. But I really wanted to avoid, there's a certain temptation when you talk about social things to take a side, which I think is bad for art. I think it's more interesting to see how those people, it applies to all of us. How do we feel of that? How you can have a normal life when you always have some sort of a games being played. I'm really impressed that the point of departure is sort of putting a manure at somebody's doorstep and then building this whole world which is so big. But the first thought is, wow, this is a very strong situation and maybe we should go that way. The Agro-Unia activities, which were very noticeable at some point, and they were very, very noticeable, they started to strike. And I knew the strike from the times of communist times. Like we knew the strikes in Radom and Gdańsk. I knew that from the history. And suddenly we have a strike here, not only farmers, but also taxi drivers, suddenly doctors. Around COVID, the whole country everybody went on strike. And that was very interesting for me. And I was wondering, what makes people go out and fight for their rights? Some of them were sort of protests against the world that is changing. So the taxi drivers didn't agree to technology taking over their world, which is not exactly true, but I think that was also an inspiration. There are social groups that strike against a new technology appearing in the world. Another topic is artificial intelligence, but that's not my specialty. From the perspective of time, It might not have been a bad judgment because the company they striked against what did not turn out to be very noble, and it was an inspiration and quite often people, it's not about how many savings you have. The bigger difference is whether you have a bus under your house or not, and the Polish village is quite cut off from the civilization, which is also interesting. Maybe it's not worth to make a movie how to change the communication, but maybe to make a movie about how does a guy feel who never had a chance to use a public bus because he doesn't have it in the vicinity. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I also would like to thank you. I hope that your example would stimulate our participants. That it's good to be true to yourself and build relations. I like that you underline the teamwork, how 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 others help you. You know, they I suppose realized how good a person you are, and it's good to build around you a team. And we congratulate you once more, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.